You are live. Here we go. All right. We are live. Let me be very unprofessional. And we can edit all that out except for the ones that are watching it here. Cory Branham. I am happy. I'm excited. I love to see I love what you're doing. What made this jump? I mean, you spent, for all of you guys that don't know out there, Cory Branham is a friend of mine. We went to high school together. He spent 11 years in the military. You're a preacher, you're a teacher, certified badass marksman, pro Second Amendment guy, which maybe some of you guys aren't pro Second Amendment. We can address some situations later, but where I come from, this small town of this Rust Belt areas, and Cory comes from the same area too. People around here, it's hard to explain because it's dead around here. You know what I mean? It's the factories are gone. It's heroin, it's meth, it's no one has really any ambition, like, at all.
Yeah. So, well, I want to say thanks for welcoming me back. I grew up here in Plymouth, and I would maybe just say hardcore marksman for me.
There you go.
But that's the term I would use. But yeah, so a lot of people ask me, man, it's seemingly every day, why are you doing this? What kind of brought it about? And there is really no short answer. But kind of like you mentioned, I look around and I tell everyone I'm the grassroots candidate, right? I'm a local guy. I don't have this big money, but like you mentioned, people with our heritage, I'm the grassroots guy, but I'm also the bluegrass guy. So
yeah,
people say, well, what does that mean? They're like, well, I have this Appalachian heritage. My family moved here for work, settled in these small towns, and then just kind of accepted that was, that was life. Every once in a while, you have someone that's maybe what I'd call small town, big time, where
Brooke Turson.
So yeah, Brooke had an excellent college career. He's doing big things.
Yeah, I love that guy.
But yeah, so you have guys that shine locally, but then no one is ready to like kick the door down and say, you know what, I deserve a seat at the table in Columbus.
See that, and that's what, and in this area, and I'm not here to talk about myself. We're here to talk about you. But whenever I decided to leave my job to pursue my career and owning my own business and lawn and landscape and starting these YouTube channels and podcasts, man, you don't know how much flack I got. And because that's the mentality around here is, don't do that. $15 an hour, $16 an hour, that's good enough. And it's like, that's not good enough for me. Like, yeah, I can pay my bills with it, but dude, I looked up, listen to this. I looked right before I got laid off. I looked out and I looked out the paint room door and I seen on the assembly line people that was 20 years old all the way up to 50 years old. And they were raising their hand to go to the bathroom, raising their hand to go get a coffee. And I'm just thinking, like, where do you want to be at, man? Everybody I know here has got that's been here a long time. Their backs are shot. They're miserable. They don't have nothing for a 401k. Like, and I just thought to myself, you know what? This is gonna be struggling. I talked to Kayla about it, and what's cool is me and her jive so good together. She's like, you know what? I can work some extra shifts at the diner. We could scale back. We can, because I had a Jeep. She goes, we decided together, like, you know what? Let's get rid of the Jeep. Let's scale back as low as we can because it's going to be rough for a couple of years. And that's what's awesome, man, because and that's going back to it, because people around here, and that's what I love to see what you're doing, because no one takes that initiative and takes that jump of saying, like, I'm going to make it. I'll put us on the map, because we have the infrastructure here to you know what I mean? There's,
oh yeah.
So what do you think about that? Like, even with the heroin epidemic, man, it's every day I see something on Facebook. I don't even want to open Facebook anymore because I'm sick of it.
Yeah. Well, so there's a little bit to unpack there. So I would say, yeah, when I decided that while this has always been my home, I kept my home a record here, I needed to get away. I needed to go get some bigger experiences. For me, an opportunity that was there for me was to join the military.
That's awesome.
And, that took me all over the world. I've been to all 50 states, and I did get to experience other cultures, other places in the States. And some places have that mindset of it's just not going to happen for me. It's just not going to happen for us. But, that was never good enough for me. So then when I came home, it's like, man, I've got 4 college degrees. I've got experience all over the world. Where do experiences best win themselves? And
you've been a public servant this whole Since high school.
I enlisted at 18 and was volunteering doing community stuff before that, so most of my life. But you know, I just believe in this area, and that's why I decided to come back here. And I thought my talents and experience lended themselves to public office. And it's funny that you mentioned, all this stuff that's been going on here is like jobs have left, and now we're kind of getting this black eye as, it's this drug area. And I argue that the issues are one and the same. Right now is represented in the House by a businessman, and yet across this District 22, Richland County has the worst unemployment rate, 4.3%. That's worse than the national average. So, and as the jobs go away, well, what happens? People lose more hope, and then that leads to, idle time. Maybe that leads them into circles they wouldn't have been in, and influences that lead them to drug use or other destructive habits. So I feel that those two issues are linked, but thankfully I feel that there's a fix out there for it. I'm not sure if you want to delve into jobs right now, but I do have
we'll get into it. And that's why I like to see, because I know that you have determination, and I know that you have the drive to do what you set out to do. Because I remember you were a grade ahead of me. You graduated class of 07. I graduated class of 08. But our school is so small, everybody just kind of jived with each other. And that's what's cool about our school. Like a lot of people, we didn't have cliques. You know what I mean? So
we knew everybody.
Exactly. So that's what makes me sad when I open up Facebook and I see all these different things about people overdosing and having these hard times. But what brings it back is I know that you have the drive, because I remember you were a pretty big guy in high school. And when you enlisted, when the Marines came and the Army guys came, I don't know why you chose the Air Force, and we'll jump into that in just 1 second. But I remember when we were all sitting in the lunchroom, and you would bring in a salad every day because you wanted to lose like 70 pounds.
Yeah. So I was,
you made it happen.
Yeah. So for my height, I was 5'10", my senior year of high school. I had to weigh somewhere in the mid 180s to low 190s to be eligible to join the service. And, through football and just poor dieting, I was, in the upper 200s, 270, 280. I didn't really track it, but yeah, so I did take it as a challenge and lost what was close to 100 pounds from start to finish, because, and I didn't even know for sure that I would get in or that I was going to go. I just knew it was something that could be a great option for me. And I didn't want to rule it out because I didn't try to be fit. Right. So I lost the weight. And then at that point, man, I was that invested. I'd worked so hard. I said, hey, let's do this for 4 years. And I wound up choosing the Air Force. September 11th was big to me. And Toby Keith was a very popular artist before, during, and after that. Yep. And a video he had was for the song American Soldier, which would lend itself toward the Army. But the very end of that video, I was watching it, and the very end of that video has a cargo plane flying away, and you see that U.S. Air Force on there. And I was considering what branch to join, and that just came on when I was watching the Country Channel at one point, and that kind of led me to the Air Force.
That's awesome. Because and that leads us back to where you come from, because just that leap, that leap that you took, getting out of this area, and I hate to, it sounds like I'm tearing this area down, which I'm not, because I feel like people like you, if I can build a legitimate business and serve the people in my area, because I'm not trying to brag or nothing, but I was offering free leaf removal services to people in help. And I feel like if we create businesses and create the atmosphere to help each other, we can make this area great once again, like how it used to be. By hear stories that old timers would tell around here, man. Like, this area is awesome, because it's like, if I'm so glad you took that jump to go to the military, because it's like factories and prison is where you go around here. And when you took that leap and left, and I followed your journey because Facebook was starting to pop, and you were moving, and then you did two tours in Iraq or Afghanistan.
So I did one tour over in Afghanistan. Okay. I was supposed to do more, if you will. I never got out of any deployments or anything, but just, you can imagine, I joined the service under George Bush. Right. I then spent the majority of my career under Obama.
Now, did Obama? I heard that Obama scaled the military back to like a pre-World War II era. Is that true? Because our military, to me, as an outsider civilian, it looks huge. I know we're the most powerful military in the world. I want to continue that, but I don't remember seeing. I heard people say that, but I don't remember Obama doing that? Did he? Like,
Well, so it was definitely scaled back. So I couldn't speak to how it would resemble
right,
maybe like the 1940s or whatever, but it was scaled back. The spending went back, and then a big thing was just like red tape rules. Like if you were downrange, you have to. It was to the point where you have to have a gunshot wound before you're allowed to shoot back. So people weren't wanting to join.
right.
So yeah, it was scaling back and not wanting to grow. I mean, the air fleet was, the same aircraft that was is what we're still just using. There was
Didn't
no
know that.
there was no big investment. But yeah, even a 1940s US military is still, I'd say, right there at what would be the best in the world in 2020.
Right.
But yeah, it was tough. There's starting my career under President Bush, spending 8 years under Obama, and then the last couple of years in the service under President Trump. There was a noticeable scale back those Obama years. But yeah, it was a great time serving. But
How was Afghanistan when you got the call? Because when you go in, you're ready. I mean, that's all branches of military are like you guys all mess with each other, all
mhm,
military guys. Because I'm buddies with a lot of guys here online, and I hear some of the old time veterans. They all mess with each other. Navy guys are
yeah.
messing with Army guys. Marines are messing with other. You know what I mean? So, what made you choose? What made you choose the Air Force? And B, what was it like when you first stepped foot in Afghanistan, and how long were you there?
Yeah, so joining the Air Force side again, it goes back to just maybe that like Toby Keith music video. I saw that airplane, and
Okay,
and
it was the airplane and the
yeah, so
pilot.
yeah,
Okay,
so
okay.
in that video, they're actually that video ends with a group of servicemen about to be sent overseas, and that's what you see is the Air Force taking them over there, and that kind of stuck with me. But just more on top of that, my dad was in the Army. I had known people in other branches. I didn't really know too much about the Air Force, and I'm never one to shy away from the unknown. So I really took that on, and yeah, I was I had just turned 19 right before I left for basic training. And so I got in, did some training in Texas, got stationed in Idaho. And then before long, I found out I was going to Afghanistan, and I spent most of 2010 there. And it's just weird because you don't know what to expect,
Right. It seems like terrifying almost.
Yeah, and then I was in Kandahar, Afghanistan, which people don't know this, but that's where the Taliban claims their hometown. So the first time someone said we want to be these extremist terrorists and we're going to call ourselves the Taliban, this is where we're going to do it. So
Mm.
you're literally on the front door of some of the most ruthless killers that you could ever imagine. So you don't know what to expect. You just got to trust your
And these
training.
guys hide among the civilians in that area. Now, when you guys went in, didn't you tell the not you because you know what I mean, but what in the topic say, hey, if you need to evacuate, and if you don't evacuate, you'd be considered hostile. Wasn't that ain't that why a lot of the soldiers had a hard time and with the rules of engagement and then people not leaving and it was a war zone? But
Yeah, so and unfortunately, like the rules of engagement haven't always been consistent. So when I was there, the a thing that people would tell you that they didn't like seeing was the enemy would know like how to affect us emotionally. So where a terror organization would have no problem taking the life of a young child, but
God,
them taking the life of a young child was not enough for our rules of engagement to engage them. So you would get a terrorist would drag a native son that whose family was thought to be sympathetic toward Americans. They would drag them in the middle of the street where everyone can see, and they would end their life often very gruesomely. But then that was not enough for us to engage them with combat forces. So yeah, and
wow,
then you always have where you'll have the enemy will try and because their technology is so primitive over there. It's like they can't take us on um, with any kind of technological means that would come close to matching ours. So they have to do that. They have to harm kids. They have to try and hide within groups that appear to be sympathetic toward Americans and then
wow.
launch a suicide attack or something when they get embedded in there. So, yeah, it's a different kind of battle than, I'd say the war on terror is the most
Yeah.
unique war
When you
ever.
were when you were going, did you fly a plane? Like, how does the Air Force work? Are you guys all pilots? Are you a pilot? Like, is
No,
that
so
a
that's
stupid question?
Well, that everyone does ask that question. No, the vast majority of the Air Force doesn't get to fly or be a pilot. The U.S. Navy actually boasts that they own more individual aircraft than the Air Force, and I think that stat's still true.
Oh,
Now, the Air Force's sole mission, well, now they've added the Space Force has taken up what used to be some of the
I
Air
like
Force
the idea of the
territory.
Space Force. I
Yeah.
like it.
So, but no, not everyone flies. Most people, you'll have nurses, you'll have me. I worked in transportation, I worked in military education, I was a certified nuclear weapons handler. So you have people that have to keep the base community running and to provide most functions that any town would need, or certainly a military
Right.
specific town would need.
Where you became a teacher? And did you decide to, or not Afghan, but when you were deployed, when did you decide to become a teacher? Because I remember you in high school, you were always a leader. You was a leader on the football field, and you was a leader outside of the outside in the
Yeah.
world, and that naturally just translated into the military, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, it did, having experience in sports and, extracurriculars definitely translates well, because you got to be able to reach people that are like you, that are not like you. You got to find common ground, because you're going to find yourself in, barracks where there's 200 people there and none of them until you get there. You got to
Right.
find commonality, and it takes a leader sometimes to do that. But no, had I have not have gone in the military, I think that maybe I would have pursued teaching, mainly because I love sports, and I thought, well, if I become a teacher, then I can volunteer to coach. And then it just so happened, as I progressed in the military, I didn't really um, maybe go out as much as a lot of my peers. I decided, hey, Uncle Sam will help me pay to go to school. So I picked up night classes at Boise State when I was there. I took online classes and correspondence courses when I was in Afghanistan. So in my spare
Wow.
time, I'm reading literature to do homework to send back to colleges in the States.
That's amazing.
So yeah, and history and political science was the field I chose for my bachelor's degree. Um, and then, you know, there's only so much that you can do with that degree unless you plan to be like a professional historian, and teaching is one of those things. So that bachelor's degree in history and political science lends itself well in Ohio to a K through 12 teaching, or for me specifically, a 7 through 12 social studies endorsement, which is what I've pursued here.
Now you're a substitute teacher now. Is that your like full time, like, because running for Senate seems like to be a full time job,
It is
but
yeah,
you
yeah.
still have to pay the bills.
Yeah, it is definitely a full-time job. So I am subbing, I'm picking up sub time. I've worked in 4 or 5 schools here just in the last couple months. And then since I fought for this great GI Bill, I'm going to school full time, picking up classes with Ashland University as well, because I always want to keep growing.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
not going to get a degree with Ashland, but I have the money to let me go back to school and make sure I'm up on current issues.
What are you taking in Ashland right now?
So I'm taking education-based classes right now. Last semester, I took multiple history classes and geography
Oh,
classes as
that'd be
well,
awesome.
because while I only got my degree, at 5, 6 years ago. That's 5, 6 years can be a long time. So I look at my opponents who graduated from high school and college in the 70s and 80s and have never went back for refresher. It just blows my mind, because what I learned in college in 2010, 11, 12 is in some cases very different than what they're teaching now. So I think you need to always
Oh
say,
yeah.
times are changing a little bit. Let me go refresh myself, honor the stuff I've learned before, but then see how it stacks up against what they're teaching currently. So yeah, I'm always trying to educate myself formally and through experience, and certainly informally. But yeah, so subbing in the area as I can, campaigning as I can, picking
Right.
up college classes, and then raising 2 daughters.
Yeah.
So
I mean, you got definitely got a full plate. I mean, that's amazing. And you also said I seen that you have a degree from Liberty University. I love Liberty University. I watch like their YouTube channels, one of my favorite YouTube channels. They're big on Winston Churchill. I'm a huge history buff with I'm trying to learn right now
yeah,
is Churchill is one of my guys that I'm focusing on. I didn't realize he's got one heck of a degree, a pedigree. He's got a great background. So
yeah.
how'd you fall into Liberty University?
So, being in the military is both a blessing and a curse, right? So you get to see the world, you get to move all over, you get these great opportunities, but then you try and hunker down and get a degree with Boise State, and they say, well, it's time to go overseas, or it's time to be transferred elsewhere. So you want to find a school that both offers a great in-residence program and online program. And then for me, having conservative values, and when I say conservative, I mean traditional Christian family values.
Yeah.
So I looked at those, and hey, I had an associate's in transportation and logistics management. I got an associate's in education management. I got my bachelor's in history and political science. And I'm thinking, well, I've got to study all these fields. I love theology, specifically biblical studies. So I settled on Liberty, often voted the most conservative college in all the United States. So I picked Liberty for a master's degree in biblical studies, and finished that actually last year. And yeah, I teach for free. It's funny, in the public or even private sector, master's level of expertise, that's when you
Right.
start getting paid. But for me, I have this degree now, and people say, hey, will you come teach adult Sunday school? Will you lead like a home study group? And I do that all for free. So I wound up with Liberty kind of by their reputation, but then by the circumstances dictated by traveling a lot in the military. And it's just been such a good fit. Like I said, I'm always going back to school, and there's a very good chance in years to come that me and Liberty will see each other
Oh
again.
yeah.
But yeah, they're a great school, and yeah, they
So
great
that's
program.
you, so you're not a preacher, or are you like you? That's just, you got a seminary degree? Is that
So yeah, so I do have a master's degree in theology,
theology? Okay, that's
biblical studies, but it is through Liberty's seminary, their School of Divinity. Um, so yeah, I have preached at multiple congregations multiple times. Now I consider myself a teacher, so when I preach, if you will, it's probably not going to be too different than what the full time person who happens to be out or sick
oh
of
yeah.
that given Sunday. It won't be too different, but my spiritual gift, as I've come to realize it, is more teaching. Now, whereas as a preacher would be viewed as more like a shepherd of the flock. So if they're not preaching on Sunday, they need to be doing marriage counseling. They need to be doing, um, delivering food to the needy. And those were not things at this point in my life that I felt called to full time. But I feel like I can teach and then fill in for a pastor, at a fairly short notice, and contribute that way
Right.
when they're called to do, be a shepherd day in and day out.
See, I feel like that's a lot of the time why the society in general has fallen apart. I hate to say fallen apart, but you look at the divorce rates in America. The churches, I think, at one point, and I think we're rebounding from that now. I think that they got too worried about politics, and they got too worried about the nice clothes, and you got to have your hair cut, and you know what I mean, looking all good. I think that is the reason that we're suffering today, because the church is falling apart. And I feel like we're going to have another great revival in this nation. I don't feel like we're going to ever make America great again until we have another revival. And I need to get back into the church.
Well,
I'm
hey,
trying to immerse myself into the word as much as I can, but like for me, I need to get saved. I need to get baptized, but I like to argue with God first. Does that make sense at all?
no, that's I was blessed to have grown up in the church, but then I had a number of years there where I didn't really know what my level of commitment should be, and looking
Exactly.
back, it's certainly what I know now that it ought to be. But yeah, a lot of times I wanted things to be my way, and I ran away, and I tried to find other ways, or say, oh, well, this is good enough. I'm basically a good person. And then all that just, with the more I studied, the more I realized that, this deserves a fuller commitment. And, you bring up baptism. It was in 2015 was the first time I got baptized. And then I've been to Israel 3 times since. And every time I
Yeah.
went and got rebaptized in the Jordan River, you know, uh,
Oh, I bet that's
so,
amazing, dude.
oh yeah, it's great. Molly went with me the first time in 2016, and we were able to do that together. And I've been back twice since then. And yeah, it's just it's great. But yeah, I understand that sentiment. And if you or anyone else ever wants my input on things, I make myself available. But yeah, I know what that feels like, to try and be like, I want this relationship with God, but
Yep.
maybe not right now, or maybe I don't fully understand. And
I don't want to half-ass it. Does that make, if that makes any sense? Like, because I feel like, and I think a lot of people feel this way. It's like they want to be good Christians, but then you see the like. I'm not trying to talk bad about any priest, but you see like the perfect Joel Osteen type style people. Then you see, you hear the bad stories, and it's
yeah,
like, man. I don't want to half-ass this, and I don't want to be an embarrassment. I don't want someone to look. I don't want to slip and be at the bar on Saturday night, and then people sit there and they go, "Dude, that guy right there preaches all the time and tells me I need to do this, but here he is getting hammered." You know what I mean? And it's like I don't trust myself. But like I was talking to one of my buddies of mine. They're like, "Well, the only way to fix that is you got to make that leap and actually build that relationship." Because like where I'm at right now, I know I'll never get any further until I actually, you know what I mean,
Yeah. No, it's
build that
easy when you
relationship.
go into something, like, building faith. You want to be perfect from the beginning, but outside of Jesus, no one ever has been. So,
Exactly.
I did that too. So in my spiritual walk, when I would, even though I grew up in the church, I would say that I got saved is the common expression. I found salvation. I would say that would have been the summer of 2015 that I really sat down studying. I've read the Bible cover to cover twice, just me and my personal
See,
studies.
that's what makes me mad. A lot of
So
people claim to be a Christian or claim to be a certain religion, but they've never pushed it. They've never wondered. They would just, well, my dad was. My mom and dad were this way, and it's just like you don't. You telling me you're only religious because that's how your parents. You never. And a lot of people are like that, man. I'm not.
yeah.
I'm not one of them people. I have to like fully understand why me and my own brain make it work this way.
Yeah, no, I'm, in America, we are kind of culturally Christian. My parents are Christian,
Exactly.
and
Yep.
everyone thinks they know, or everyone knows that one Bible passage that tells everything, or maybe the doubter will know that one Bible story that makes them think that, they shouldn't pursue Christianity. But no, it's just a spiritual growth happens. So I look back and, 2015, yeah, I would say I was right with God, if you will, at that moment. But then I look back and kind of things you mentioned, it's, and I don't think if someone has a beer that lightning's going to strike them or
Right
anything
now,
like that. But
and that's not. I'm not talking about. I'm just
yeah,
going out on Saturday night acting a fool and trying to
yeah. So
hook up at 2 o'clock. You know what
yeah.
I mean?
Yeah. So I've, when you get into like when your responsibility in the faith grows, like teaching, I've just found that even the desire to do that stuff, I just have no desire. I don't want to go out. I just
Yeah,
want to, if I'm, you know, uh,
that's amazing.
yeah, I don't know, just spiritual maturity and growth happens, and where, I can be 31 as a man, but 6 as a Christian, really 5 or 6 years old in my Christian walk. And you think, well, is a 5 or 6 year old at anything going to be perfect? Probably not. So
So it's
that's where,
strength. Yeah.
yeah, you gotta seek mentors, and you gotta seek things on your own. And hopefully you inspire someone else. And then, like the New Testament tells us, iron sharpens iron, men can sharpen
Oh
men. So if
yeah.
you get people above you and below you that are challenging each other, then that's when the spiritual growth happens. And that's how it's been for me. And, I'll continue on that path.
So when you came back from the like I think your last place. So I think you were living in Texas was the last spot you were living in, or
I was in North Dakota.
North Dakota. Okay. Well,
Yep.
when you got done with it, you knew you're like, okay, I'm on 10, 11 years. I'm a I'm gonna go back to civilian life. When you got back to this area, and because you ain't been home too long,
No.
what made you say? Well, like I know you talked about it, but did you see that Mr. Obenhoff is getting the seats open, and you said, you know what, I'm not gonna sit around and complain about it. Is that how it went? And I want to run for state senate because that's a heck of a jump.
Yeah, so it is. Well, I tell people this: military service translates so well to public office. I've already proven I'll put my life and reputation on the line for people I don't know, people who don't look like me, people who don't vote for or vote like me.
Right, because
So
and I don't want to interrupt you because I like where you're going. I want you to go right back to it because if you do get this seat, and just like I tell people that run for other office, you get the seat. It's not just Republicans that you're representing; it's everybody in this district,
yeah,
whether they like you or not. You know what I
whether
mean?
they like me or not. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but people I've talked to over the years, like I've known I would run for public office. So I came back in the summer of 2018. Uh, by the end of 2018 had decided that, yeah, we're going to take on, it's Larry Oboff is the guy's name. He's
Yeah.
the current gentleman standing in the seat, is term limited. Yeah, I talked with my wife and I said, I got this idea about running for state senate. And I actually, this is new to people now, last few months, but I started the formal paperwork with the state and with the Board of Elections. My paperwork is dated May of 19. So I had already, my wife and I had talked, and I had went in and got the paperwork, 5, 6 months before I announced to the
Right.
public that I was doing
Okay.
this. So yeah, I knew when I came home that public office was gonna was
Something you're
it
interested
was
in.
it was going to happen. And now people say, well, why do you want to go to the big stage so fast? I said, hey, I'm not a career politician. I'm not going to spend 20 years hoping I get there. I have unique skill set that translates well now. Let me go where I can do the most good for this area, and that happens to be the state senate. And then again, the current gentleman is terming out,
Yeah,
so
it's perfect
yeah,
timing.
it's perfect
Now, have
timing.
you talked to Larry about it?
I've met Larry in person once, and now as sitting, he probably is not in a position to give any kind of public endorsement. But
I don't
yeah,
think. Yeah, I don't think he would. But
yeah. So I've seen him in person twice. We have spoke briefly once, and he knows that he was just cordial and a gentleman to me. And like I said, he's in as
he's done a pretty good job, I think. I
he has
mean,
done a good job.
I was
Yeah.
looking at some of his resume, and I was, whoever picks up that mantle. I mean, that's going to be a big seat to fill. He was leader. He was Senate
Yeah.
leader, wasn't he?
Yeah, so he's the current Senate president, and that's maybe
President.
not
Okay.
as much due to simply being from here. He has, the typical Senate term is 4 years, and you can do that twice. Well, Larry had the privilege of being elected with a special election, so he's actually been in office going on 10 years. So he's the most tenured, essentially.
Oh, okay.
So with that tenure, heavily influenced to be the Senate president. So yeah, so I won't walk in and replace
Oh,
him,
yeah, yeah.
as the Senate president and get to do everything he was doing, but I will start where he started and
Right.
representing, this District 22 area.
And you said that you knew you was going to run for office. Me and you used to go back and forth probably 2010 up till just after a little bit after 2016. But speaking of 2016, you were one of the first people to endorse Trump publicly. Now, we were just nobodies at the time,
Yeah.
but I argued with you a lot. And I said, you're wrong. This guy's not a conservative. He's not this. And I've been proven wrong. And I was arrogant. I used to be, it's funny because now that I'm coming up on 30, I've realized I know nothing about anything. Because I used to put everything out on Facebook, and I was right. All my political views were right. And if you didn't believe in me, like, you haven't done your homework. You haven't done that. It's like,
Yeah.
once Trump got elected, and I was like, everybody's stupid. Here we're going to the death throes of the republic. I thought we were done because, I didn't know. I was panicked. And you were like, no, man, you called me on it. I went dark on politics, and I've been proven wrong. So I've come to realize is I don't know anything. I mean, that's my new journey now. It's a reason for this podcast is to meet people, talk to people, because now that I'm going, I'm like, arrogance and you know what I mean, it doesn't do no good studying and doing all this if you don't bounce the ideas back, because I interpreted things wrong a lot of times because I didn't. Iron sharpens iron, like you said. Like I didn't get to work it out. Like, so it's just amazing because you did say you knew you was going to run for office. I felt like he was going to run for office, but that's amazing. You did call it on Trump.
Well, the thing about Trump is, people think that, I don't know why, but people don't know how smart he is. And while he, like me, he was a newcomer to public office. He was never a mayor. But
Exactly.
he did have, a unique skill set that lends itself well to running a country that was falling apart, in my opinion. But the thing about Trump is, if you look up old videos, there's videos of him from the 80s, 90s, and even 2011. He was on The View contemplating this run for the presidency. So it's this man, once you got to realize that, he was going to put his billions up to fund his campaign, but then you realize this guy has been working on this for 20, 30 years. He's had the time to be advised correctly. And then, yeah, where his personality and his past, I do not consider to be the type of conservative that I would say I
That
am.
Twitter account.
Yeah, his Twitter account, I wish he would use a different tone sometimes, but he's just no nonsense.
He's the
And
perfect troll,
yeah,
though. Like,
he is.
because I was a big Tea Party guy. You was nice. Like, the Tea Party used to be different before the 2016 election. We were united in the conservative party, from libertarians all the way up to like anybody middle of the road was like jiving, man. And then soon as 2016 hit, or 15, the run, our party split, and it split bad. But and it split so bad, and it was such a it ruined his campaign. It really ruined Trump's campaign because we had the House, the Senate, and obviously Trump was president, but the American populace of the conservative side was so divisive in the Never Trump movement, which I was kind of very friendly to that movement at first until I went completely silent. Uh, we couldn't get nothing passed. And you know what I mean? It was so bad, even John McCain come down and give the thumbs down. I mean, where are we at now? I mean, you follow national politics. Where do you think the party's at now? Where do you think where do you think the Trump's going to go? Because I think Trump's getting better. I really think he's getting a whole lot better.
So I do definitely feel the division there, but I want to say that a lot of that, and now being a self-funded kind of low budget candidate, the division is what people will call the swamp and what I call the grassroots. So while I support Trump, he had a little bit more,
A
but
couple bucks, yeah.
you're still at a point where Trump was new. Like he was, even though he had a business background, which is not unheard of by any means in high level politics, he didn't pay the political dues, and he kicked the door in on the highest office in the country, possibly the world. And that did ruffle some feathers. Hey, you should have to be a representative, senator, governor, whatever. You should have to pay these dues. And then he broke that model, and that broke some hearts. That definitely hurt some feelings. People who maybe thought, well, if it wasn't for him, it was my time. But I do think that people are coming back together. But you're going to have, at least for a while, what Trump would call the swamp, and then what people like me would call the grassroots. I'm tired of seeing every politician be a lawyer or businessman.
Always lawyers, man.
Always lawyers and businessmen. That are running. But I think what you're going to see and people are wrestling with is that's the only model they've known, and they feel it changing. So that anytime major change happens, it's uncomfortable. But I'm on the record. I've been telling people, watch the next 20 to 30 years, and you see how many veterans run for office, see how many teachers, see how many healthcare professionals, because everyone complains about those things: VA, healthcare, public education. Well, Jesse, I tell people, you wouldn't hire a lifeguard to fix your car. Why would you elect a businessman to fix the VA? Why would you elect a lawyer to fix education? It doesn't make sense. So people are breaking. When you have to change your mind, when a Trump makes you change your mind about a long-standing process or the way you feel it should be working or has always worked, you're going to have division. But I think the future is bright. People are going to reconcile the traditions of the past, but they're going to forge ahead. And I just think I'm one of the early candidates in a wave. Yeah, I may be a local veteran that's getting elected, but I think I'm just the first in a wave, and that wave has, caused some friction, but I have no doubt that it'll smooth out. You'll have your outliers, some people that are never Trumpers that are, that maybe think it should be. No, you need to have been in public office for 30 years to even consider being a senator or governor, whatever. I don't feel that way. And I think the younger generation on these grassroots movements aren't going to feel that way either.
Yeah, and as a teacher, you as a teacher, what do you think about the voucher program?
So voucher as
school
in
voucher, like well, here's how I say it, like I pay school taxes. Like I just now had a child, but for let's say for the 12 years that I didn't have a child, that where I was working, I had to pay into the public school system. Why can't we take that money that I've donated every week to schooling? Why can't I take that money when my child's born and give it to a private school, give it to like school choice is like a lot of people call it, or voucher system? Do you think that's ever going to happen? Or like, because it seems like public schools and the unions, they have, I just don't think it's a good situation. I think it could be better. And what do you think about that?
Well, even when I was in the military, I would get a lot of like exemptions and stuff, but I didn't even live here. But because I kept my residency in Ohio, I had to pay school taxes here where my last home of record was, which was in Plymouth. So I've paid school taxes my whole life, regardless of where I lived. And, that's one issue in a bigger issue. Do I think that we could get to a point where you could maybe be elective on where your school money goes? I think it's possible, but I think it's immediately unlikely.
Right.
I would definitely be open to it. But, that's just one of those entities that needs to be looked at from top to bottom. And it's hard to look at it from top to bottom if 75% of the people doing the looking are from business and law. Like, I mean, you would need a teacher to say, you need, like, I have two kids that are going to be in the school system for the foreseeable future. And you need people at my level who are seeing it. And right now, it's just people that are making education decisions, whether it be the finance side. And this is something here. Think about this. So, if a healthcare system moves to Plymouth, or they move to Shelby, or they move to Richland County District 22, now immediately they may have to pay school district tax, but long term they don't. And when they get their exemption, they get all the money they've ever paid in school district tax back. So where
Didn't know that.
you are not even having kids in the system, the last decade you've been working, you're paying more than Avita's paying in Ontario.
How does that?
So
I mean, I like the idea. I like the idea of offering like like Senator Rand Paul offered like economic freedom zones for businesses, which I like that, but I don't think necessarily that works on school taxes.
no, it doesn't. So again, it's one of those things where the whole system needs to be looked at. Is it alluring to a business to say, hey, if I bring my hospital to, let's say, Plymouth, um, and then long term I'm not paying any school district tax? Yeah, that's a benefit. But is maybe just they pay a little bit less a better option? Because again, when you may have kids that never go to that school, but just by way
Exactly.
of address, you're paying. Those are things that need to be looked at. I don't have a set answer on those.
It's a tough one.
Yeah, with my, religious beliefs, I live in an area that does have an excellent public school system, Ontario
Oh yeah.
public schools, but then I'm right near Mansfield Christian. I'm right near St. Pete's. So that's something that I'll have to look at. And right now I pay Ontario school district taxes. My daughters are 2 in 1 month, so they're certainly not sitting in those seats yet. So I'm paying those, but then I may get to a point where I personally decide, well, I'm going to keep paying these taxes and then pay tuition at a private school. And yeah, I think there needs to be, if you are paying a tuition elsewhere, there should be some kind of at least mitigation for you paying a full school district tax. But then again, they can't let everyone out of that who elects not to go, because the big businesses in healthcare aren't paying that either.
Right.
So
Oh,
it all needs restructured,
I agree.
and it's not going to get done, and it's not going to get done right until education professionals are in office, people that have a new mindset, people who have kids in the system right now. It's not going to get fixed until people put a fresh face in there with a fresh
Oh
perspective.
yeah. There's going to be so much like you said. There's so many. I want my son to go to a private school. I know I can't afford it right now, but who's to say in the future that somehow I become financially stable enough to be able to send my kid to a private school? And it's like I think even if your kid's going to a private school, I'm pretty sure you still have to pay public school tax.
As far as I know, that's still the case, because
And
school
that just
tax
seems
is by
odd.
address. It's not by
Right.
amount of kids or where
But
kids attend.
at the same time, if to play devil's advocate with it, it's like, well, I mean, it's equal for everybody. Everybody pays it, no matter who you are.
Yeah.
Unless you get
unless you're a healthcare business
exactly,
and you're exempt, which
is odd.
it is. Well, it's one of those things. Say, well, you would want the most healthcare and you would want them to come anywhere. So I get that you don't want to burden them down. A lot of these that are, they claim not for profit. That's another issue, what that actually means. But there is some incentive there to get them out of certain things. But it's where, like I said, I mean, we don't have kids in the system. We may have kids that we're paying extra to go to another school,
Right.
but we're now paying more than these major healthcare companies, and it at minimum needs a fresh look, and maybe realistically, it needs some major changes.
Yeah, I think so. But like, I even heard, I think it was Joe Rogan talking about, like, we're talking about major changes and in the future. Wouldn't it be nice to sit back and figure out a way to, like, we can vote online? Why can't we vote online yet? You know what I mean? There's so much to, like, you voted with an absentee ballot, and if you don't pay attention, I mean, it's hard. And even with guys that are working 7 days a week, it's like, oh crap, it's March 17th. I got to go vote. It's like, boss man ain't going to be like, yeah, go vote.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's different. Now I know the polls are open till like 7 o'clock, but then it's like family time. I think maybe it'd be nice in a couple years when we're just bouncing ideas off the wall here. Nothing that like an Ohio State senator could do. This would have to be at the way up at the top. But
Yeah.
it'd be nice to someday like be able to vote on your phone. You know what I mean? I mean, elections are already getting manipulated now. Good or bad, whatever. The dead people vote every election.
Yes, they do.
You
So
know.
on that, what I would say is people need to that is possible. I definitely, it's not impossible. So what would happen is people have to agree on what constitutes as ID to vote, whether it's driver's license or other state issued ID, and finding a way, which it certainly exists in 2020, it probably has been around for decades,
Oh
to
yeah.
link that one ID up one time to a login to a database, instead of bringing the
Yeah, because I can't even use my coupon twice.
Yeah.
I mean, if they're that good to where I can't get a 99 cents off my McDonald's fries offer online,
Exactly.
why can't I vote online? Because I can do that at my own leisure.
Yeah, someone's,
instant results.
Yep, their ID, it should be unique to them. It's certainly within the realm of possibility. But again, the big thing is we have all this technology, and you have states that turn a blind eye to voter fraud. Like I said, in California, Virginia, recently, hundreds of dead people miraculously voted, and put on one side. These dead people don't vote Republican. It's the weirdest thing.
It's the weirdest thing. I don't know how that.
Yeah. So if people could agree on what constitutes the proper identification to vote, one, and then somehow link that proper identification, scanning the barcode on your driver's license, whatever the case may be, getting something in the mail once throughout the year with a barcode or a password, if you will, that's one time use only. You log on, because right now you can go to the county board of elections, put in your address, and they will show you right now today what your ballot's going to look like on March 17th. So the technology to have the ballot online already exists. It's just how do I get a one-time, cannot be manipulated, cannot be duplicated code for each voter? How can I get that to them and make sure it's them?
Yeah, because even if it doesn't sway in the Republicans' favor, which I think it probably would, most people are more conservative than anything, especially with the Democratic Party. And that's one thing I wanted to go. Well, like, there's a Tesla floating around in space come on. We should just let Elon Musk be like, hey man, we got a voting issue. Elon Musk, you take care of it, because that man is brilliant.
Yeah.
But speaking of the Democratic Party, and I don't want to focus too much on politics, but this is the same Democratic Party that I grew up in. My dad was he was a union member, local 3050, or that was my grandfather, local 3057. My dad was local 169 over in Mansfield, AK Steel. And man, they were a true brotherhood, and they all voted Democrat. Bill Clinton was. It seemed like after Clinton, this party that I used to be a part of proudly, this party just changed,
Yeah, so it's, a big thing I run into is I have family that I would identify as like kind of Southern Democrats, or kind of like you were saying, where they're culturally Democrat because they saw what the party was doing for, meaningful labor unions once upon a time for their dad, for their granddad, their mom, their grandmother, whatever the case may be. And then they stop investigating the platform. So, where it's good to have that cultural connection of, a Democratic driven union really helped out my grandfather and father. But now that's not the focus anymore of the Democratic Party. But if you're culturally a Democrat and you're not staying up on the platform, you're going to fall back to what and it's, hey, my dad, my grandfather endorsed these people. I'm going to stick with that. So I would just encourage people to just Google what was, pull up the 1980 presidential election and see what the Democratic platform was, and then pull up the 2020 platform. And what I guarantee you won't see in 1980 is
we got Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan.
I believe so. Yeah. But yeah, so what you like, where now you watch the Democratic debate and the argument, it's no longer, well, should an issue like abortion be allowed? It's the only argument between the 7 candidates is, well, how close to the moment that the baby would have been born on its own do we allow it? So that's what I'm saying. Yeah. That wasn't even being really talked about in 1980, with certainly Roe v. Wade, now 47 years old this month. It was an issue. But I'm telling you, the platform has changed so much that people who are culturally a Democrat, if they don't start reinvestigating the platform, they really don't even know what they're voting for. But it has changed so much; it's not the same party.
Well, and that's a good thing about exactly, and that's a good thing about Trump, because like he pulled a lot of the union workers out, and and everybody says like, oh, like maybe people just didn't like Hillary and this, and it's like, well, yeah, but like there is a lot of people who just took the blinders off. A lot of union workers that took the blinders off and said, you know what? This matches more up to my values. No longer is it the party of like the union and the working. The unions, unfortunately, I hate to say it, but I feel like they've lost their power. They they become they become what they set out not to be. You know what I mean?
Well, I tell people this. If you look at John F. Kennedy, he's one of the
Great.
he's a president on the Democratic ticket. And if you look at John, it's like I said, the way things have changed. You look at John Kennedy's beliefs now, he'd probably be a Republican in 2020.
No doubt. I've heard that before.
It's one of those things where people that's ingrained in them, they respect people who were Democrats in their lives, but then they don't stay up on the ways that the parties have shifted. And, so they just stick with what they know. And I would just encourage people to say, yes, both parties have changed. Don't get me wrong.
Oh yeah.
But the Democratic Party of 2020, for people that have followed it historically, it's not the same thing. It's not even close to the same thing. And that's why you get people that are, I'm tired of the Democratic Party because I need to take the blinders off. When they think about it, they're like, you know what? The Republican Party of today, the values are more in line with when I joined this labor union in 1985. Right. So if people just give it a fresh look, take the blinders off.
I think it's going to happen more. And we mentioned 1980, but if we go to 84, it was Walter Mondale and Ronald Reagan. Reagan won in
49 states.
49 states. It was a landslide. And I'm not making a prediction, but like after this whole impeachment thing, I believe that the American populace is going to be so pissed off and so tired of just nonstop this. And after it's all said and done, I feel like Trump's going to win in a landslide because
I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and I think pre-impeachment, and I have no problem with what Trump did. Everyone says he abuses his power. So what Donald Trump stands accused of doing is using his power as a sitting president to ask if the previous vice president abused his power. So it's a catch-22. If you don't ask the question, well, then you're being lazy because your office had previously been abused. But if you ask the question, well, now you're breaking the law. It makes no sense. But prior to this impeachment, if I worked on the Trump campaign, I would have said, Mr. Trump, we can lose the popular vote by 4 million and still win the electoral college. That's what I would have told him. I said, that's our goal. Let's keep the popular vote within 3 to 4 million.
You're not going to win the
college. Yeah. But now with this, how much money, how much time, how much of just a disgrace it's been. Nancy Pelosi's 30 golden engraved pins.
She's done.
So will he win the popular vote? I don't know, but I would not be surprised anymore because people are going to say, this is not the Democratic Party I joined. Independents are going to look and say, this is ridiculous. Yeah. And those, I think it's just my prediction, in heavy number are going to vote for President Trump. And, I think, where we were thinking 6-7 months ago, keep the popular vote within 3 million, and we got it. I don't know that he'll have a Reagan style win, but I don't see any Trump states flipping, and I see a couple non-Trump states or areas either flipping or splitting much closer.
It's strong in Ohio, and everybody focuses a lot on Ohio, and this is where I live. I know Kentucky's really strong, even though they voted out Matt Bevin and they got a Democrat as their governor now. Like there's just something about Trump's aura to where I don't think he's actually a Republican, and he's like, if it wasn't for Twitter, if it wasn't for if he wasn't like a troll, he could win over, which I like the troll and making him mad because that's what that side's done this whole time is pick. Now they got a bigger bully now.
Yeah.
And he calls him out on it. But if it wasn't for a lot of that, he can pull in all these independents and anybody that's kind of left to, you know what I mean? Like just right there cruising in the middle of the road.
Yeah.
I believe he's doing good things. And have you noticed what's going on in Virginia? What do you think about that right now? It's crazy right now.
Yeah. Well, I've actually had people reach out to me in the last 24 hours saying, hey, such and such that I love is going down to Virginia from Ohio
I wanted to go
to stand in support of them. But no. So this is what I tell people about the Second Amendment. As you mentioned earlier, I love guns. I inherited my first rifle as a .22 rifle from my grandfather who passed away in 2006. Still have it to this day. My kids will shoot it. I still shoot it. I was recognized as a marksman in the military. Only person in my race that can make such a claim. This is what public officials have: is when you get elected into office, you have two choices. You have two choices. That is it. You have two choices. Anything else that's on your integrity. And your choices are this: you uphold and defend the Constitution, which says clearly the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. It says it, it's clear. Or you can cave to public pressure. I think what
Right.
Virginia has done has caved to the public pressure. And you got to understand, Virginia, that's borderline holy ground in America. That is declaration, the
Yeah.
forefathers are from there. So what has happened is you have their Democratic leadership, maybe some soft Republican leadership, has caved to public pressure. And let's talk about red flag laws. Let's say, oh, if something has more than a 10-round clip, it's a military assault weapon. I don't even know what that means. And I was
No.
an expert in military arms.
Yeah.
So, but what has happened is they had the Constitution and they have caved to public pressure of, I'm not supporting and defending the Constitution anymore. The public pressure says I need to do something on firearms. And that's the path they've taken. And, I hope things don't get ugly down in Virginia.
Yeah. I don't think they will, but I mean, they're down there today, and
Yep.
I haven't seen. I know that I wanted to grab my AK and go down just
Yeah.
because it's like just show my support, and it's like I just sold one of my ARs, but it's like I have ARs and I have an AK-47, and they have such bad connotations, but it's like my gun has never gotten my AK-47 has not never gotten up out of the middle of the night and went and slaughtered a bunch of people.
Hey, look, trucks don't get DUIs, pencils don't misspell words, but somehow guns are a problem here. So yeah, I've never seen that either. And there should be no restrictions. If your hobby is to go shoot an AK-47,
Right.
if your hobby is to get something of even more power, and you
Yeah.
have a range and you're being safe about it, and you've not broken the law, obviously you've went in the stores and bought these, and unless you lied on your paperwork, which would then break the law, and someone
Right.
could legally take your guns then because now you've broken the law. If that's what you choose to do with your time, that doesn't
Right.
bother me.
I agree, and that's a good segue into Ohio and its leadership talking about the red flag laws, which is like Virginia. That's where it started at.
That's where it started.
Now, what's Ohio talking? Where are the red flag laws in Ohio right now? What are they talking about in the Capitol?
So thankfully, it's still at the talking about it stage. Unless something has happened fairly recently where there's been a bill secretly pushed through, it's just being discussed. But so people know what a red flag law is. A red flag gun law is to where, my neighbor now finds out that I'm the most conservative candidate in a state primary race. And then that person does not identify with me ideologically. That person can now anonymously make a call, make a report, and say, hey, this Branham guy anonymously, he shouldn't have these firearms. He's got two kids. They're in danger. This guy's crazy. And now all of a sudden a SWAT like team is going to kick my door in the middle of the night to investigate that. So it's guilty until proven innocent. But that's what the red flag gun laws start as. And it's a lose-lose for the gun owner. And this is why it's a lose-lose. Because even if you get to keep your firearms, your privacy has been invaded without due process. But here's the thing: if someone kicks in my door at 2 a.m, I have a firearm ready. So this is what happens: I have been awoken now by my dogs, my family.
The castle doctrine.
Yeah, by castle doctrine. My domain is somehow in my mind under attack. So I'm going to grab my personal defense 9mm that I keep in my bedroom. Now, a SWAT like team watching through my window, I don't even know they're there. They see me walk down the stairs with a firearm. They can't take a chance of their life. So now they shoot me. And then how does it read in the paper? It reads as if the false accuser was correct, because the paper is going to say, yep, this Cory Branham walked down his steps, guns ablazing, when really,
Crazy gun
yeah,
owner.
I'm just, they make me out to be a crazy gun owner when really I have had the alerts through my family, through hearing sounds out of order. I haven't pointed at anybody, but you put law enforcement in a position where they've been given a tip, which is probably erroneous. If it's about me, I would say it is.
Right.
And then it puts them in a mindset where someone has told us there's a crazy gun owner, off his rocker in this house, and they see me through my window carrying in a defensive posture.
Oh, it's done.
It's over. Cory Branham has just been taken out. And now my wife and my two daughters, who we have an action plan in my house, what safety they're going to take, they're hearing me now fall to my death in the house. And all the while, my death is going to be justified because it's going to read as, yep, he was crazy. He drew on this military
Exactly.
style assault that I didn't even know was there. I'm investigating a potential breaking and entering, maybe. I'm
It's
intentionally,
scary.
so yeah, it's a lose-lose. Red flags are a lose-lose to your due process.
There is no
And
due
yeah,
process.
because there's no due process. But then also, if you lose your life,
Oh yeah.
there's now no one can get your side of the story. Now the false accuser is proven right because the local news are going to say you drew, you did all this. So it's a
It,
lose-lose. They should
yeah.
be avoided at all cost. And Governor DeWine, who I voted for, if he ever supports them, he will not get my
We
vote
lost.
this year.
Yeah, he will
He
definitely
will have
lose that.
lost my vote, and I would highly doubt that in our great state
Well,
he'd
and
get reelected.
Kasich was the one that was so wishy-washy and mushy on all this, and that's what makes me mad. Is it's a touchy topic, and you
It
can play
is.
devil's advocate with it. It's like, well, sometimes the process doesn't work, man, and family members have to step in, or close family have to step in, and but like, unfortunately, that's not the way the Constitution's set up, and sometimes, I mean, it's hard to explain, but due process for the right, you got to do your job as judges. They would have to do their job. I see the argument in a good way, but it it depends on who's in power, because they can twist it and abuse it. Because if the sheriff was using it correctly, let's say we do have these red flag laws. Let's say I have a nervous breakdown because, well, my father has he was a paranoid schizophrenic. He couldn't own guns,
Yeah.
but at one time he could. But he knew, and he got rid of his own guns. But let's say it's hereditary, and I, in 10 years from now, start going schizophrenic and bipolar, and legally they can't take them the gun yet. But the only way it can happen is if either I hurt somebody or I brandish. But if that red flag law was in place, Kayla, or you, or someone close to me can be like, hey, he's off his meds, he's doing this. We need to step in and take action. There, I can see that side of it, but at the same time, it's a really hard situation to you know what I mean. You want to prevent it as much as possible, but you don't
Yeah.
want to infringe on the rights of any citizen.
Well, and here's the thing is that responsible gun owners, they will identify that if they know that someone is irresponsibly using
Right.
or has been abusing medication, alcohol, drugs, whatever the case may be. A responsible gun owners, they don't get credit for this, but they will kind of self-police. They'll say, you know what, Cory, I'm going to talk to you man to man here. You have gone down a road. You're drinking. I think just let me come and get the firearms for a couple days. Let's talk about this. I'm going to encourage you to go talk to your medical professional, your counselor, whatever. And then, because once there is a diagnosis or a prescription, then now you do legally
Right.
become unsafe to own. So in the gun owning community, they get no credit for self-policing. Especially in the military, that was self-policing was just, I mean, that was every day. You get people that don't want to admit that maybe they're having some PTSD, but their buddy sees it, and
I bet that's rough.
yeah, and their buddy will come to them and say, Joe, listen, I know you're proud of these firearms. I don't think you're doing anything bad with them, but look, I've seen you're jumping under tables, you're having nightmares. You need to take the steps to get your mind right. Let me borrow the guns. Let me get the guns out of the house for a couple days. If you want to go shoot together, let's go together, store them at my house. The gun owning community has no credit for being that responsible, and that's the standard. That's
My
not the
grandfather
exception.
did that to my dad.
Yeah, as you said, I mean, that is gun
And he was okay with it
owners.
because he knew he was nuts.
Yeah.
And crazy people, that's the thing. People say, oh, he's crazy. Crazy people know they're crazy.
Yeah. Responsible gun owners don't want irresponsible gun owners because they know we get lumped into it. So every day, responsible gun owners are saying, we need to talk about this. Let me house them for now. Let's go shoot together.
Right.
And then let's make sure there's not something bigger here. And, the reasonable gun owning community is going to say, you know what, man, I really appreciate that. You know what, things have been off. Let's go out together a time or two. Let me sit back and reflect. And we gun owners do that every day. And it gets, I say fake news. You'll never hear that story in the
Fake news.
news.
Yeah.
But
It's
that
definitely sad.
self-policing happens every day. And I guess people just assume we can't do it, but we do it every day.
Well,
So
yeah, everybody relies so much on the government for anything because it used to be like we talked about earlier in the program. Churches used to take part in if you knew a guy was kind of drinking too much, if you knew a guy and his wife were having troubles, you didn't go to Facebook and talk bad about him. You went to the pastor and said, "Hey, man, uh, let's say Jesse's not taking his meds." And I can see some signs where he's starting to cycle back and he's starting to go kind of crazy again. Where the preacher can sit back and be like, "Hey, what's going on?"
yeah, well, I mean, and a lot of that too is, you used to have people that were like revered authority figures, so they didn't need the government, they didn't need a badge for their
Exactly.
influence to have merit. So yeah, I do think that still exists too. I'd love to see it more, but yeah, you're right. You should have those social institutions, and in my opinion, it is the church, and that's been a heavy influence to me. And I would say if my pastor came up to me and said, you know what, this is off about you, I don't take it as an insult. That's his job as a pastor to do that. But yeah, we've kind of got so sensitive that we don't like being called out. But then at the same time, you see how police officers are treated. We
Oh, it's
have people
bad.
out on the campaign trail that find out that that I have a theological background. They attack me and lump me in with, whatever pastor they heard of or saw in a movie that was a bad person. So yeah, we need to get in those people that have been put in position that should have influence outside of the government. But then maybe we need to be a little less soft if someone does say, "Hey, are you okay?" And
Right.
not all mad say, "Whoa, hey, are you talking bad about me?" So
Right. I agree. And that's all. That's a good segue to 22 suicides a day.
veteran, yep.
Now, what there's help out there, right? I mean, in the VA, like, or I don't. I wasn't in. I was never in the military. I see this and I have severe like sympathy, but what I can't as a civilian, I can't. I don't know what this guy's going through.
Yeah, well, it's weird for me because trying to represent District 22, and then as a veteran, the only veteran in my
Yeah,
race, knowing that 22 suicides a day, a lot
and
of
it's
it,
probably more. I've heard higher.
yeah, it may very well be. It may be higher, so and it fluctuates. But
Sad.
is the help there? Sure, it's there. How long do you have to wait for it? There are like some crisis lines to call in, and those are well advertised for. But like for me, it's that ties back into the jobs thing. When someone gets out of the military and they move back home and they see, oh, I don't have much opportunity here, but now you're out of the military and you're not probably going to get back in. So then
Right.
what do you do with your time? But yeah, so a lot of it, the VA system, and it's improved, and it is improving greatly under President Trump. They had no accountability for a long time. It was hard to fire someone in the VA. So you may have a bad provider giving you bad advice, not taking you seriously, but then they keep their job,
You get
complaint after
your
complaint.
you go to the VA for
Yeah.
all.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So I'm a
Is it
VA
real long
patient.
lines and like what everybody
Well, it
says?
it can be very long lines. Well, then think about this. It's January in Ohio. There's snow on the ground. If I want to go get mental health counseling, my two options here in Mansfield are to get a video conference, maybe, which to me doesn't meet my
Yeah.
personal need, or to get an appointment up at Cleveland or down in Columbus.
Whoa,
Well, I mean,
that's pretty far drive.
that's an hour and a half away, and there's snow on the ground, and I got kids, so yes, like the lines don't have to be long if you have the means to get to a bigger
I
city,
see. Yeah.
but at the same time, they are too long for if the country is going to put you in the situation that we all know now comes with drastic mental health risks
Oh,
for a
it's yeah.
lifetime. Locally, you need to have the support there. And we'll see how far the Community Care, the Mission Act, which allows for people like me who would have to drive over an hour each way for specialty care to go get seen locally by a provider. We'll see if that makes a dent in that number. Now, there is still some red tape where if I'm suicidal right now, which I'm not, but if someone was,
Right.
like, where are you going to go right now? You may call a number, but can you go talk to someone in person if you're not a video conference guy? And I think with the VA, and what I would push for as a senator would be someone needs to be available for a face-to-face chat within like a half hour drive time for our vets.
Yeah, Ohio's one of the only states that got the biggest multiple cities. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It might not be the biggest state in the union, but it's got the most big cities in
Yeah.
this whole state. So there's no reason, You know what I mean? That you can't get good health. There should be a VA in every major metropolitan. Is there not? Or
Well, even in Mansfield here, it's only outpatient. So and a lot of the times it's not doctors. You'll see a nurse practitioner, or again, if you want to see that specialist, then it's a video conference. But then, well, maybe they don't exactly pick up on your nonverbals, or you don't pick up on theirs, or there's a glitch, or maybe you misunderstand a word. And yeah, there are gaps there. There are certainly gaps. And like I said, when the country puts you in a position where it is very likely that long term, if you've seen death and destruction in the military, you're going to need help. There needs to be more available local, and 22 a day is far too many. I say two a
yeah,
day, one a day is far too many. So
I agree.
yeah, there should be, with the amount of money that we've spent over the years and these bad deals under Obama, if a fraction of that was invested in veterans affairs, mental health, how many of those 22
Yeah.
every day we could have saved? For me, it's a no-brainer.
I think if we can go after that, and I'd like to see President Trump's second term, if he gets elected, to get that number down to 0.
Yeah.
And let's say it's not an issue. Vets and people who are returning from the war. Let's say the war finally ends, but the people who are recovering, let's say they're doing good, they're getting the help they need. I think then we should take that same for the veterans and use it to the society at large, so we can stop seeing the mass shootings in the different things. Now, it's not been as bad, but it's still horrible. It's horrible. It shouldn't happen at all.
Yeah. Well, that's something that's big with me. I saw, where Governor DeWine did accept more refugees at his choice. That was not mandated by the federal government. And, that stuff, it just always blows my mind, because the opioid epidemic, homelessness, veterans, for me, it is hard to build a house without a foundation. How can I take on the world's problems when my vets are killing themselves, when people are homeless and on drugs on my streets? And so that's a big thing with me, is while I want to help the world, certainly, I have to strive for improvement here locally. And people lose sight of that, I think. And the reasons why, or I'm sure everyone has their own, but that's something that's big with me. It's like, yeah, let's get our veterans right. Let's pump investment into our current social issues, instead of pouring more people that are, that are maybe going to
because
fall victim to the system themselves.
I'm sympathetic to that's a hard one.
Yeah.
We're talking about refugees, people that are coming from war-torn areas.
Yeah.
And people think, oh, well, we just need to do this. It's like, well, America is a beacon of hope.
Yeah. You walk through downtown Chicago and you tell me that's not a war-torn area.
Yeah. And so I was going to segue into that too. It's Chicago. If you look up, we can probably Google right now, and I guarantee there was at least 10 people murdered.
Maybe
this weekend.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, so it's like I said, where it's always great to help, but at some point you have to admit that I can't keep helping without first helping myself. And, and for me as an elected official, myself is my constituents, and everyone in the area. So if I don't have to take refugees in when the opioid, I've buried 3 high school classmates already, to direct drug related deaths. And, like we said, we're from small, graduated 60 people, and now 3 of them have passed away for drug and opioid deaths. And it's like,
and there was just one last week that was a couple classes under us, and
it's commonplace now.
It's commonplace. I'm almost numb to it.
Yeah, I know. And that's how it's gotten, is you almost get numb to it. And then you're also numb to, oh, well, we're just going to take on the world's problems. At some point, people got to draw a line in the sand. Is it me in my backyard first? And then once we get that right, or there's probably no magic number. Unfortunately, suicides and, drug use and drug abuse will never go completely away. But you have to say, look at it now. Does it have to be better here now before I take on these other problems right now? And I think most reasonable people, would say that right now in Ohio, it is not a good time, Governor DeWine, to take in all these refugees. So we'll see what happens with that. And certainly we want to help, but when yeah, people hear war-torn countries, they think of overseas, but then it's like, you go tell me that these people in homeless streets in every inner city in Ohio, they don't feel like they've been
Yeah.
displaced. They've not,
They're not going to get set up
Yeah.
with because yeah,
healthcare and a
exactly. That's what
job
I
if
was
they
looking
want it.
for.
Yeah.
And that, I don't know. It just burns me up. What exact? All right. Speaking of taking care of business, what exactly can a state senator do? Now, would you be on a subcommittee? Do you have to? How does how does the inner workings of politics work? Because that's a guarded shell. No one really
It
knows.
is.
You know what I mean? How does it work?
Well,
You
for
get
me,
elected day one. What happens?
so well, day one, I'm gonna have the family there. I'm gonna have the advisors there, have the pastor there, and we'll have a small intimate setting. But
I'll work for you. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hey, we're gonna have the Jesse James podcast
Right.
do the first take. But so this is what happened. Yes, as a senator, you can join subcommittees. So for me, there's a Veterans Affairs subcommittee, for example. So that's a logical fit. I'll probably start
Right.
there advocating for our veterans. But yes, you at large, you'll be part of the Ohio General Assembly, which is 33 state senators. I don't know, somewhere around 100 House of Representatives for Ohio representatives. They discuss legislation. They meet about once a week or so to vote on it. So I will represent District 22's values when an issue comes to the floor, or I'll speak on behalf of District 22 and statewide veterans if I'm on that committee. So yeah, it's you have an opportunity to you can vote on behalf of your area. But if you do have expertise, like I maybe do in education and veterans affairs, then I would feel like it was my duty to join those subcommittees and say, hey, how
Oh
can we
yeah.
help this program? So yeah, so day one, I will, I'll say, hey, I'm here. I want you guys to meet me, but how do I go get involved with education? How do I go get involved in the veterans piece? Oh yeah, my wife and both my parents are nurses, and I see, overworked nurses and problems in healthcare.
Oh,
Who
I've
do I
heard
talk
about
to about
nurses.
that?
Heard that they work long shit and like,
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know anybody. I'm not with anybody who's a nurse and directly,
yeah,
so I don't know. But I've heard that they got grueling schedules.
they do. And thankfully, House Bill 144 just passed. People can pull up and see who in my race and how they voted for that. But House Bill 144 change something that was happening and was going afoul in healthcare, and it was that the healthcare system can mandate overtime for nurses. So you're working 3 12s a week,
Wow. Yeah.
but then now you have to work overtime because they say so, because they don't want to pay for someone else to have healthcare or whatever. So 144 just passed, which is going to help mitigate the amount of forced overtime nurses can work.
So that's in the Senate right now, no?
That has passed. And
Okay.
again, there are people in this area that are in the current race that I'm in, and how they voted for that is different. I would have voted yes for that. Some people locally voted no for that.
Well,
But
why is nurses even? That's a private job, right?
well, yeah, but then you got to think when healthcare system comes to an area, then they fall
See,
under.
yeah, that's what confuses me because it's like, who builds the hospitals? Is it the local government builds the hospitals?
It could be, the healthcare system themselves are going to have some money on the line. The government's probably going to give them some incentives or maybe some matching funds or some tax
Right.
breaks or,
It's just blended government. It's kind of getting to be a
yeah,
little crony because it's
yeah,
so
it could
big. You
be.
need, but yeah, lobbyist and cronyism kind of work together to where now it's unfortunate that she can't talk to. Hear the kid in there.
Hey, I appreciate you having the kids. I have two myself, so I know how it goes.
But she can't talk to her. Like nurses can't talk to their bosses directly and be like, "Hey, boss, I know you own this hospital." It don't work like that, does it?
No, it doesn't at all. And that's something where, healthcare has been an issue for a long time. And I
Oh
don't
yeah.
know that there's a perfect fix in place right now. But I will tell you this, the answer is not mandating how much nurses have to work overtime. That's not the answer.
No, I agree.
And that's another thing when people hear like this healthcare system is not for profit, that doesn't mean that they charge you the minimum that they can charge to make a buck. That's not what it means. All that means is they are partnered up with at least one charity. So their CEOs are still making big
Still
money.
getting money.
They're still getting money. It means that they somewhere are affiliated with a charity. It doesn't mean that they charge you the minimum for that
I
service.
didn't know that.
They probably don't And most hospitals, very few hospitals, as a matter of fact, are going to say, yep, we're a for-profit hospital. The majority now are saying,
you can't say you're
so
for-profit.
everyone's saying that we're a not-for-profit, and it just makes everyone think that, okay, this is the close to being free that they can give me. No, that's not what it means. So yeah, the healthcare system, it does need an overhaul. And again, House Bill 144, thankfully, said that, well, the answer isn't just working our nurses to the bone anymore, even though I think 12 people voted to continue that practice.
See, a lot of, well, I'm sure that people was being pushed to vote that way.
Yeah, well, yeah, that could be there as well. There could
Oh
be
yeah,
some...
you know how it works. And I wanted to ask you about, you mentioned House Bill 144, which I'll look it up, but I've been following House Bill 178 for a long time, and that's the concealed carry. You're an American citizen, you can buy a gun, you should be able to conceal it if you want. I know we already went into guns, but that's one thing I forgot to go into. That stalled in legislation. It passed, but then it got held up. Why does that happen? How does that, why is it on hold? It's been going on for about over a year now. Oh, West Virginia's done it, Kentucky's done it. I don't see the problem. Like, I shouldn't have to as an American citizen. Kayla's got her firearm. She's got a nice little Kimber 1911. I got my M&P, Smith & Wesson M&P 40, and we got our concealed carry. But I shouldn't. The rigmarole that I had to go through it.
Yeah.
Like, which is I like taking courses and classes because I like to learn. But what happens about the single moms who don't have 8 hours out of their day? They're working 2 jobs already.
Yeah.
Now they have to go 8 hours a day. Then they have to go stand 4 hours to go talk to a sheriff that may or may not accept it. And then they'll follow back with you in a couple of weeks before you can legally carry it. Now, you can open carry in the state, but as soon as you get in your car, you better have it locked up, everything separated.
Yeah. Ammunition in the back, gun
It's
in the
crazy.
front, to where if someone now jumps out of their car to stoplight, you don't have self-defense.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So all I could say for that is, I'm a CCW guy too. Actually just renewed last week. So I always support the legal carry and open carry of law-abiding citizens. But again,
I like open carrying a lot, and a lot of people don't like it because you become a target. But I prefer to open carry a lot of times, which I need a new holster. But
yeah,
I like to open carry. A lot of people don't. I'm starting to see it a little bit more and more here in town, which is awesome. It makes me feel like, hey, you don't come to this town and start causing havoc.
Yeah.
Because it's like, what are you, John Wayne?
Yeah.
It's like,
we're not going to just be like fish in a barrel here. You may get 1 or 2 of us, but just know that somebody maybe in the immediate vicinity can defend us if someone wants to come in here in a church shooting. So yeah, and all I can say for that is that I think it goes back to, do you uphold the Constitution of right to keep and bear shall not be infringed, or are you giving the social pressures? And all I could say is there's at least a chance. I don't want to speak for anyone else, but I mean, there's social pressures, and certainly there are, Democrats
they own the media, and it's such a big machine. Yeah. It's a huge, it would be scary. Imagine, well, you're about to be in this spot. You're going to go into a spotlight to where you got every major TV personality that's going to want to talk to the incoming class. And they're not necessarily on your side. And as soon as you start telling them that you're a teacher, you have a master's in the seminary theology, you know what I mean? All this impeccable resume that you have, they're not going to like that.
No, they're not. I've already, I tell people, if there is this thing that we know now as the swamp, they already don't like me because I haven't paid the political dues as I hear people say, and I'm not going to. I'm going to do things my own way. I think that's the right way to go about it. But yeah, I've already felt that, I get criticism on social media. I get, just people even of my own party that don't want to see me at dinners right now because they're like, oh man, this guy is going to be bringing change, and we kind of like things the old way.
Right, because he's not just
we can't buy this guy. You know what I'm saying?
You're not going to be able to buy it. And what I like about you is you understand that, like, you're not just a Republican. You have to represent everybody. But that's going to segue into this question here, and we'll be wrapping it up before too long. What's it like running for office? Like, it would seem like it'd have to be almost conceded, almost arrogant because you have to talk about how great you are all the time, but that's the way it works. Like
Yeah.
you have to get your message out. But what's it feel like running for office? Is it a little bit different than what you thought it was going to be? And what's the wear and tear on it? Like your wife, it's got to be, she's just recovering from having a baby.
Yeah.
She's going to need all the help she can get, but you got to be out there. You got to be out here knocking these doors.
Yeah, so I mean, it's one of those things where, you do have to have high confidence, and you do have to kind of be your best promoter, and that's why one of the first interviews I did in this process, they're like, why are you feeling confident? And it's like, well, I've done so much that this is not the pressure of handling nuclear arsenal. This is not the stress of being bombed by the Taliban. So
Exactly.
this is, I mean, I'm battle tested. I'm educated in the field. So I feel like I'm ready. So you do have to have that confidence, and yeah, and you got to make sure you keep yourself in check. You have to make sure that you're still taking care of the family. But it's, I tell people all the stuff that I'm doing, I'm the busiest I've ever been. I'm the tiredest I've ever been, but I'm counteract all that with I'm the most motivated I've ever been. So I tell people I'm the most invested candidate, not because I'm spending the most money. I'm probably spending the least, but like I said, I'm in education. I'm in the VA. I have 2 kids that I want to see have opportunity in this area. So it's just that how much can you do and how little time? And then where do you find your motivation? For me, it's my faith in my family, and then having the hope that the community is going to be there. So when I run out of gas in my phone will be there, and it'll just remind me, I need to keep going and win or lose, which I certainly expect
You're
to
not in
win.
it to go to second place.
Yeah, I'm not in it to go to second place, but win or lose, I mean, maybe I planted the seed to someone else to say, you know what, I can do this. Because a lot of people ask me like, how do you even run for office? The Ohio
Right.
Constitution just says you have to be 18
Most
and
people
live in
don't
your
even know how to register to vote.
yeah. So if you're planning to vote and vote for me, you need to go register. All you got to do is Google it.
Yeah.
Go to the whatever county you live in. Just
Post office, I
yeah,
believe.
post office, library should have the literature, should have the forms. But all you got to do is Google on your phone. Sometimes you can do it completely online.
I think Facebook offers it now.
Maybe where you just Google Richland County, Ohio Board of Election. They'll have their own website. They'll have links specifically for that. If you need to come in, or if maybe you've moved counties.
But if your political party has changed in the state of Ohio, I know it's an open ballot for the presidency, but if you are a Republican, you're going to get a Republican ballot
for the primaries. Yeah, so you have to.
If you were once before, and that's what I'm talking. If you were once before a Democrat, which I was, make sure that when you change your registration, you have to put it on there.
Yep. So Ohio, you cannot get a primary ballot as an independent. You have to have a party affiliation for a primary.
I don't like that.
So yeah, I mean, it is one of those things. I think some other states are different, but
I think America's ready for a libertarian, like a true libertarian movement. I thought I was into the Rand Paul thing years ago. I think a little bit we all kind of were.
Yeah, no, I respect what Rand has done, and he's still doing a good job.
And his dad, and Ron Paul, I was big into that too. So it's like, but I'm really thinking America's ready for this center, like not center. Center's a bad word. It's wishy washy, whatever. But like that's the only real way to go about it, honestly, because you got to take a little bit. Because some things are good from the old school Democrats, some things are good from this. You know what I mean? I hate to say it, and a couple years ago, I'd have never said that, ever.
Well, I mean, it's never a bad idea to go back and say, well, this has proven to be a good idea. How do I make it better? How do I work this?
Because we got to take care. Like, what do you think? We got to take care of our people, and I believe the churches will eventually step back up like they used to. But a lot of people aren't super religious, which is cool. Do your thing. Like even like people just probably expect certain people to be anti-gay or anti this, and me as a conservative, and I'm not going to talk on you. You'll have your. I'll let you'll say how you feel on it. But even for like gay marriage and stuff, my situation and how I feel about it is, I believe in it's for a man and a woman for procreation. But I don't care what you do. It doesn't bother me. And the only reason why marriage licenses were ever introduced in America was so years ago, so blacks and whites didn't marry.
Yeah.
So why's the government doing it anyway? If you want to marry and you say, hey, this is the guy that I love, I want him to be my beneficiary. I don't care. Like me, but that doesn't personally affect my life. Just don't jam it in my throat. Is that wrong?
No, yeah. I have strict religious views, but one of the strictest forms on my views is that I love everybody, whether they agree with me, whether they not. So, yeah, I'm certainly, it would be against my call for religious freedom to tell someone that they certainly have to agree with me.
Yeah.
Now, one thing, I'm not for redefining anything. So if we're to tell the church that, hey, you have to now recognize and
Right.
define marriage as this, I'm not a fan of that. I would not support that. But yeah, I am in no place. If people ask me who I thought they should be with and they wanted to talk to me, then certainly we can have a conversation.
Well,
But
yeah, your personal opinion is different from
yeah,
litigation.
yeah.
And that's what
So
people confuse. They act like government has to have a litigation or some kind of law or some kind of rule all the time. And that's not the way it works.
no, well, it goes back to the big government versus small government. People have
Exactly.
gotten used to the government having a say in anything, and it's funny because you read, the Bill of Rights, and you get in there to the non-enumerated rights, and it's power that is not specifically given to the federal government belongs to the states. But
Yeah, the
now in
10th, yeah.
practice, we're doing the other thing. So what'll happen is now a lot of the Supreme Court is legislated from the bench. An issue will go up, something will be found unconstitutional, and then it blanket applies to the country. It shouldn't be that way. Now you've brought it up, and I'll say, if a state has decided that this is how we define marriage, the federal government, I don't that is not a constitutional authority given to the federal government, is to define marriage. So it's a
Right.
non-initiative, it belongs to the states.
Exactly.
But
And that's the way I feel. I don't like the big government. You have to make a law for this. You have to make a law for that. It's like the government is so entrenched in our lives. Like I was over doing a fence job the other day, and just for me to be able to go put a fence job up let's say you hired my company, Black Brook Lawn and Snow, if you want anybody out there, uh, to fix like your deck, do lawn maintenance, landscape install. I have to go through all kinds of red tape.
license, permit.
It's
Yeah.
just it's so hard. And that's why it's like, oh, why don't we have business entrepreneurs in here? It's like it's hard.
Yeah.
And it's confusing, you know what I mean? You have to, like, every town you work in, you got to get your license from that town. You got to have your separate insurance for this. It's just a lot.
Well, I want to tell you something that's funny is right now, like cutting the red tape is the big buzzword. And it's funny because the people that are saying now, let's cut the red tape, look at how long they've been in office.
Oh yeah.
And then you say, well, wasn't the last 10 years you've been in office, how much of that red tape got in place? So it's like you're in such a place now where you expect the government to do so much that the same person that championed and pushed a policy that has become red tape is now often the same person, or very near to that person that's now saying, well, let's cut it. So it's have your cake and eat it too. Well, I got, yeah, I was great. I a lot of these resumes will read, I pushed so many bills and I got so many regs adopted. And then that's on the resume.
I co-sponsored this.
Yeah, I co-sponsored such and such a bill.
One.
And then now on the campaign trail, it's now I'm your champion for cutting red tape. And I'm like, well, then why does your resume talk about all this stuff you've authored that has made it harder to?
It seems like the Republicans has been entrenched for such a long time. They don't do anything. They don't take a pro stance. But that's one thing I respect about the modern day Democrats and progressives, because if they want something, they go get it. Like Bernie Sanders, I don't agree with a lot of his stances, but I respect that guy because since like 81, that guy's been in the Senate and he hasn't changed at all. I mean, he's been crazy Bernie since, you know what I mean? He's been doing his thing since.
Well, that's a whole nother issue about, should someone be allowed to be in public office for 40 years?
I don't agree with that. I believe term limits, like once you decide you want to make a career out of it as being a public servant, as in like a senator or something, like I don't agree. Yeah. What do you think about? I don't even like the life term sentences for Supreme Court. And it's not necessarily a life term. It's pretty much a life term. I can't necessarily think of the word, but
it's like a lifetime appointment.
It's a lifetime. And like what John Roberts did to us years ago with Obamacare, I feel like, I don't know. I just got so aggravated with that. I don't think it should happen.
Well, I know the intent behind that is so they not be politically motivated. So our state Supreme Court, they are elected. Federal Supreme Court, they are appointed by our elected official. So there is a balance there. And, that's something I've worried about too. But I do think at that level that, at least for the answers that I see in place, that lifetime appointment is working.
I
Now,
see where you're getting at.
if you do get a justice, that you would hope that, like we talked about with responsible gun owners, if someone has been in office for 40 or 50 years and now they have agendas and vendettas and maybe they are losing touch with reality, maybe their health, you would hope that they have the advice to say, look, you need to step away. You don't need to keep doing this until you die. You've done a great job, but it is time. So it's to keep them free from having to pander to voters,
Oh
to be
yeah.
unencumbered by voters. But at the same time, hey, does maybe knowing that you can do it for 20 years, is maybe that a better option? And I'd certainly have those debates and talk about those things.
Right. And like as conservatives, we believe in like a limited government, small, Tea Party stuff, less government. Man, I feel like there was such a opportunity when Trump got elected because everybody hated him. Everybody hated him, and now you hear Democrats and liberals finally saying government shouldn't have this power, government shouldn't be this big, blah blah. It's like, man, I wish Republicans would have rallied together and said, you know what, you're absolutely right. And President Trump, I think, would have got together with it. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I shouldn't have this much power. You know what we should do? We should go back to the original document and scale all this back. But it's hard to do that. Once government takes hold of something,
They don't like letting it go.
it's never going.
So it's yeah, that is tough. But then I do think if enough people get on board and we start realizing that this thing was meant for the states to have rights and
It's true.
not government overreach. I
Mark
mean,
Levin wrote a good book years ago and because it only takes 3/5 of the states to just say, you know what, nah, it ain't gonna work. Like I think that's 27 states. I think that's all you need to
yeah.
get together. The state
So
senators.
well, it's just going to be tough because if it if something like that fails, then it's people with big egos, or oh, how do I recover from this? Can I recover from this? Or now I'm a kind of a joke in history that I've
Right.
led and supported this movement. But yeah, I think the Constitution is pretty clear that federal government should be small and limited, and state government should be allowed to run their own states. And when I get in our state capital, I'm gonna, if I will represent my district, certainly with the voices that I hear, and I'll hold to those values. I mean, I
I'm
will.
really looking forward to it, man. And I tried to not be so political in this for this sit down because people they already hear you, see you, and you'll be offering that. I wanted to give more of an inside, but it is what it is. I like politics a lot. Me and you bounced back and forth on Facebook for a long time. Well, when you were growing up, what is you took a natural? I remember it. You took a natural leadership role. Like, where did that come influenced by? Like, because like you didn't have and I'm not trying to talk on your behalf, but from what I can recall, you didn't have a perfect family figure with the golden retriever and the two kids and the SUV and the white picket fence out front living in the burbs.
Well, for me, it was that I got to see hard work, and I know that shaped me a lot. And I, thought where I tell people, I spoke at a pro-life rally yesterday. I'm the second child to a teenage mother who then put herself through nursing school
Yeah,
and is doing great now. So I got to see hard work, but then they worked so hard that they weren't out in front leaders, but their actions was enough. It went without saying that they were in charge, they knew what they were doing. But then they worked so hard, it got me to a point where then I could do sports and I could get out in the public, and I had these opportunities to do things and make friends. And then I knew what hard work and success looked like, even when it, wasn't always spoken of or out in public. And then I was just able to mesh that. I had a natural love for people. I had seen what success looked like in my home through hard work.
right.
And yeah, it just took off. I mean, it
How's
was,
Molly doing with all this when it started? I'm sure she was a little more comfortable when it started. She was pregnant when you started running.
yeah.
Now, how old you? It's 6 weeks.
No, she turned 1 month yesterday. So 1 month and 1 day is our youngest, and then our oldest uh,
So
is going on 3.
wow. Well, will you end up moving to Columbus then?
No, so I wouldn't move to Columbus. So again, looking at, and people can go on like the ohio.gov legislature sites and get their meeting schedule. It's about once a week. You're driving down to Columbus to represent your area. Certainly that can be more if you
Would you
maybe
still be a teacher?
that's something that we would have to think about. I would want to be fair to the school. If it's a public school that could then look
Y-
like they are endorsing
Yeah,
me,
that's what
then I would want to
anything
be
you would
fair.
do as a senator would
Yeah,
could be missed, because I just don't understand how, like, because it's not that big of a salary. I think it's only like 60 grand a
it
year,
is.
which
So
is more than what I
yeah, it's
you know.
65,000 and some change is the base salary for a senator. Maybe you join more committees, you get more stipend. So I mean, it can be a full-time everyday job. Um, Now most day one senators like me will probably not, they'll take a couple years and maybe just do one committee that they are the expert on, like so me be the VA and
So you'd be
Veterans
down there a
Affairs.
couple of days a week,
I'd be there, yeah, I'd be there once or twice a week. Uh,
traveling all over.
yeah, so and then I would keep my house here in Richland County, and I don't ever plan to move again. Now if people, we do a great job in Columbus and people say, you know what, Cory, I mean, there's a US House of Representatives opportunity that we think you're perfect for. Yeah, my family would have to talk, see if that's something that we would want to take on. But I won't rule anything out, but it's just for me, it's just a one-track mind. All I can think about is the next 8 years as the senator, doing the best I can. And then if people say, you know what, maybe step away, then if that's what the people say, then that's what it's going to
And
have to
your
be.
faith would be able to tell you that. You'd be
Yeah. Yeah. I know people say you're crazy to go into public office and, but my faith just being I mean, I'm more than qualified. I mean,
yeah.
so yeah, and then it was the same thing. If I thought I couldn't do the job and represent the people the way that they deserved, if 8 years or 4 years as a senator winds up being my time, that's what it winds up being. But if I was to do things the way I think I can, and then going to DC for elected office, or you know being an Ohio governor, hey, I guess I could do that too.
Yeah, and I love how Ohio's set up right now. We have term limits. Term limits on everything. That's eventually, I think, going to go to the federal level, like not just term limits, and I want term limits across the board.
Well,
And I
term limits in Ohio, they read that way, but you only have to take a 4-year break. So I could,
is it every other 4 year, or is it only
so,
twice though?
so in the Ohio House of Representatives, you can be elected to 4 2-year terms and do 8 years. You can go do anything else in the world for 4 years and come back and do 8 more years in the House of Representatives.
That's not really a
So there is a term limit to a point. There's a term limit with a 4-year break. So it's not a true term limit as you've termed out, you can never do it again. Now, most people don't do that. They'll go up or they'll retire or they'll go to DC at the national level. But yeah, it's a term limit as long as you take a 4-year break, do 8 more years, take a 4-year break. So it's not when people hear term limit, they think after you've reached this term, you can never do it again. That's not
right.
true. You can't do it without a 4-year break.
So day one, you get elected. You're watching you're watching they call in every district. You get elected. What's your first move then?
So I would want to meet the other new people that
Right.
get elected with me. There's some great candidates here, and just in this general area, I would want to meet the representatives that would essentially be under me. Each state senator has roughly 3 representatives that would fall under their district, their scope and area of influence and responsibility. I would want to meet all of them and get a big picture of what we can do together. And then again, I'd find my peers as maybe incumbent senators or new senators and just find the people I think we can do the most good, and then just make my services available for Veterans Affairs committees, education committees, things that I see that I have the ground level view.
That's what you're going to get elected on.
Yeah. So,
All right. In closing, President Trump keeps talking about this 1 point whatever $1 trillion stimulus, not stimulus, infrastructure bill. Do you think that's going to happen? And how does the current Senate, if it does pass, how does it get earmarked to each state, and where can that money be given to?
well, we'll
You don't understand my question?
Yeah. So, Trump typically things he wants to get done, it seems like it's going to get done. So I mean,
I hope it does in a weird way, even though I don't like the debt, but I can see the benefits of it as well.
yeah, so I'm inclined to think that it's going to get done. We'll see how fast that it'll take to get done. But then as it comes to being allocated, I would certainly fight hard to get the most for Ohio. But we'll have to see what state leaders
We have
kind of fight
factories
the
here
hardest.
that are
We do.
just sitting empty.
Yeah, that's a big thing for me is jobs, and whether it be the USMCA that just signed with bipartisan support, that is promising about 250,000 jobs, but they're all going to Cleveland and Columbus.
Yeah, I don't
So
understand that. Why?
yeah,
Like they got enough. I hate to say they got enough. I mean that's a pretty big area.
Yeah.
Cleveland and Columbus. Columbus is like a million people already.
So right now, Columbus is sitting at 1.5 million. In the next 30
So-
years, they're projected to double to 3 million. I don't know if you've been to Columbus lately, but ask yourself, can this place double? No,
No.
it can't double. But what's happened is what my team calls job
Wow.
migration. So new jobs are created, but no one is saying bring them back to Mansfield. We just concede that we have to drive to Cleveland, that we have to
I
drive
know a lot of
to,
contractors that drive every day.
so you have people that accept that we have to drive. But I think if I get elected, what'll happen is that 25-year-old Amazon warehouse entrepreneur is going to say, they have that guy with this unique background that knows logistics, that knows the education, that speaks the lingo of the new entrepreneur of 2020. When I get elected, I think I can make this area appealing again to those people. And then I know the history. In the back half of the 1900s, you look at GM thriving, White Westinghouse, Ideal Electric, Artesian, state and national entities that thrived here. GM was that like that. So I know the history, but I also see the future in a way that people that are not in touch with the new way business is done, with the new entrepreneurs of 2020, that new type of entrepreneur is not going to take the old way serious.
No, not at all.
When they see me fighting for this area, when I had options all over the country and world to do,
and that's what a lot of people don't know is you could have done anything.
Yeah, so I had, with my military certifications, I had job offers at every military base you could probably think of with my military logistics expertise, my nuclear handling experience. I could have gotten lucrative positions there, but I chose to come back to this area to be part of the comeback. And so I do think there's a comeback story here in District 22.
Now, is Huron in that at all?
Nope. So Huron, I'm not sure.
Stops right up the road.
Yeah. So what's weird about Plymouth is it's one of the only towns in the state and few in the country where two counties meet at the town's main street.
Yeah.
So you live on the north half of Plymouth, north of Main Street. You live in Huron County. You live on the south side of Main Street. You live in Richland County. And then it just so happens those two counties aren't in the same district.
That's so odd.
But how that helps me is, well, now when I go to get things done at the state level, I go find my Huron County representative, the senator that covers Huron County, and say, look, I grew up in a town that splits this. I know what's going on in Plymouth and Norwalk and Willard. I know I have friends and family there. I know what you're saying. I speak your language. And it's the same thing.
That's smart.
It's the same thing for me. I am on the edge of Richland County as it neighbors Crawford. Now, Crawford County is District 26. So if me and the senator for District 26, if we get together and it's like, look, I have a Crestline address. My mom's worked at the Galleon Hospital. I've been to the Bucyrus Bratwurst Festival. It's like, I speak your language. I know you. So it's not like I'm just embedded in this middle of Richland County and all these other areas are like this foreign territory. Yeah. I know them.
Heartbeat.
Yeah. I know their heartbeat. I know their issues. I know their local uniqueness and customs. And if you don't think I can go and strike that chord with their representation, I'd say that's a failure on someone to recognize that it's a benefit to have grown up in an area like this where Huron County, Crawford, and now you're all in different Senate districts but you can reach a common chord.
Oh, I love it. What's some of the craziest things you've seen so far in this campaign, right before we close?
Well, it's weird when and I don't ask for money. People ask me what it costs. I tell them what it costs. But when people give you their own money, which again, I'm certified to the Secretary of State, I account for every dime. When people give you their money, when people say, drop a sign off at my yard, it's just, to feel someone believe in you, it's just something I hope everyone gets to experience. Maybe not politically, but in something, but just feeling belief in you, and knowing that someone sees enough in you to, I mean, what makes America great is we get to vote, we get to elect our leaders. And
Yeah.
when someone tells you that it is my intent to fill in the bubble or the X or the check mark by your name as opposed to my four opponents, wow, you realize that you're doing something special. And those are just those pinch me moments about, all
It's
that,
got to feel special
all
knowing
the
that.
hard work was worth it.
I see it on Facebook, man. I
Yeah.
see it. I see it around. I see a bunch of signs, especially going through like Shelby, and these are the areas, like you said before, are almost forgotten. And I tell you what, we're not the forgotten people, because these areas, these small towns, we make the difference. These people in the bigger cities and stuff, they don't care.
Yeah.
At least that's my perspective.
Well, it's a different level of caring, like I said, in the small town, man, when was the last time you had a guy like me running for a state level?
I
So
never got excited about it.
it changes the beat of the flow of the town, as opposed to of, where a Cleveland or a bigger city would say, yeah, our people from here, we're just a population so big, someone's going to do something good, as
Exactly.
opposed to where here it's, it could be history. I'd love next year to drive through Plymouth and say home of your state senator,
Right,
but
exactly, and get you a
it's,
Chick-fil-A
yeah,
sandwich.
it's just different. So,
Well,
but yeah.
we might be getting a Chick-fil-A. We might have. Well, I do believe in you, and it reminds me real quick of Representative Dan Crenshaw, and he reminds me a lot of you,
Dan the man.
Dan the man. Exactly. He didn't have a plan B, and he says it a couple different times. He's battle tested. Everything. He didn't have, like, I think his thing was like December 6th of 2000 whatever. He didn't have a plan B like that. He knew he was the underdog. He didn't pay his, but he knew, like, look, this is what I got to do. I've dedicated and you're in that same situation. I believe you can do it. I think you got a lot of support. You got my support. You got this city support, and I see it all over. I believe in you. And now we got to push you through more Medina and stuff. And I think as soon as people start hearing your message, they're just naturally going to see it, because people are tired of the polished, perfect lawyer, whatever. People are tired of it, and I think it's going to turn around.
Yeah. Well, I tell people, you're not going to find me speaking the King's English anytime soon. So, I'm not a member of any country clubs. Don't mind people who are, but that's just not my style. I have several suits, and I'll certainly wear them out on the campaign trail, but you'll also probably find me in jeans and a t-shirt carrying a kid through Meyer to get milk and bread, So I think I'm a relatable guy, and it's time for that.
How do people get up with you?
So I'm on all forms of social media, Facebook, Cory Branham for 22nd District, Instagram, the same handle, Twitter, at Ohio_Cory, Snapchat is Cory Branham for Ohio, the letter 4 as opposed to the word. I'm on there. And then, people see me around. I have a schedule. I have a debate coming up on February 5th.
I can't wait to that.
Ashland is wanting to host that, but a group in Medina is wanting to sponsor it. So we're agreeing to some
all 5
details
candidates
there. All 5 candidates, I've been told, have accepted their invite. I did immediately. I'm sure they probably did as well. So yeah, there'll be a debate coming up. And then from there, you can't really lock yourself in too far in advance when you're doing something like this, because then, you go out and win this debate, like I feel I'm going to, and then now all of a sudden people in Medina want you in, large numbers. So we take it a couple events at a time. Spoke yesterday in Mansfield, spoke in Mansfield twice in the last couple of weeks, Shelby once. And again, the debate February 5th scheduled for Ashland. We'll get that out. And then February 8th, I've accepted an invite to go speak to the Medina County Families and Neighbors. So yeah, people now, as soon as people hear my message, they bring me in, and everywhere I go, I leave with voters.
I think it's going to work for you. I think people's going to reach out. Your email is what again?
So Cory Branham for Ohio at Gmail is the campaign. No, Cory Branham for Ohio, FOR, is the official campaign email address. They can send any kind of questions there. I try and get back to people quickly. It is a busy schedule, busy season. So, but yeah, people can email, social media. It's just so easy with it's at your fingertips on your phone.
And Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. That's probably probably be the best way.
Yeah, and it's such a equalizer. Whereas, as rich as some of my opponents may be, they can't buy
Well,
Facebook.
they're not
So
sitting down and having long, because as far as I know, not a whole lot of people in this area have podcasts.
no, I've heard of them. I've never been on one, but we'll
It's
be
pretty simple. It's a conversation
yeah.
getting recorded, and it's a long form discussion because anybody can listen to the sound clips. And this is why I'm happy that you accepted this invitation, because I wanted to know a little bit more. I think when we start sharing this around our media area and stuff, people, we can listen to the same sound clips over and over, the same interviews with the same answers. It's about your average newspaper interview is probably what, 10 minutes,
Yeah.
and it's the same, pretty much the same setup.
Yep.
Which is cool because I feel like I can offer people, and you can explain to people a little bit different. People actually know who you are. I feel like we've captured a lot of your personality, and some of your ideas and where you come from and how you've created, why you think this way, and knowing that, like, it's not polished, it's real. Sometimes there's a little rough around the edges, but that's how America is. That's the way, that's the
Yeah.
honest, real way it works.
Hey, America, it's a tangled jungle out there, man.
a
You
tangled-
gotta get it. You gotta get in the weeds, and you gotta really meet people at their level. And unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, I'll say fortunately, because I think diversity is important. Not everyone needs to be talked to like a lawyer. Not everyone needs
Exactly.
to. Sometimes you need someone that gets in the weeds, that's from your level, that's at your level. That's why I encourage people. March 17th, it is St. Patrick's Day. So think green, think grassroots. That's me. But then also think, well, green, that's a U.S. Army, that's a U.S. military color. Think veteran, get on March 17th, get your green on for grassroots and military appreciation, and go vote for the grassroots veteran candidate. And I think it's time for veterans to shine and looking to be part of this wave.
Yeah, and I appreciate you coming on. I definitely like it a lot. And if any veterans out there, I'm sure he'd still love to talk to you. If you're having a hard way, I've heard you talk a lot about the 22 veterans. That's sad, and
It is.
And I think
preventable.
It's preventable, and I think your VA message, your teacher message, because you're not running a real political message, you're running a what we need right now.
Grassroots. This is what's
Grassroots.
going on for most Americans, for most Ohioans, for most here in District 22. That's their everyday concern. Healthcare. What's the system like for my kids? What about Uncle Joe or my dad or my friend that's come out of the service and I'm worried about them? That's what people are worried about. Why are jobs not coming here? Why do I have to drive an hour? I graduate from these prestigious universities here in the district, Ashland University, but then why do I have to move? Why can't I open my law firm here? Why can't I run a factory here? And I contend that it's because you need a fresh perspective, someone that knows the daily issues at your level, at the grassroots level. And regardless of how many opponents I have here, it's me versus the field.
It's you versus the field. Yes,
people that don't know this area are going to see my opponents as a group, and they're going to see me as the outlier. If you want the outlier, if you want to take a chance on someone that is at your level, who I feel makes me the most qualified, I'm your guy.
Well, yeah, my vote. We're going to close it on here. Reach out to him for anything you need, Cory.
I appreciate it, Jesse. Thank you.
Close it out.